You seem not to want to talk very much right now, Bubby. It's very difficult for me because I'm not the expert that you are, but I remember some things that focus a little bit aside from the way that I was hijacked. The idea of building a prosperity for all children equally had a rough time going because when I was a child, busing was being challenged. And it's very difficult for angry and resentful young black children to assimilate into a new school that's teaching the old routines. And even the college was refusing to teach ecology. Out in the boonies, there were people making observations that the environment wasn't going to be able to stand up. And of course, I could see that people were trivializing the path of cultivation. And they were ruinously waging war against people who were perfectly normal. And the power structure began to seem like a behemoth. It was very difficult to analyze because the foundational belief system of the United States was clearly cogent and understandable and meaningful. But when you tried to apply that to the civics of our situation, people said you were haywire and laughed at you. And they beat the living daylights out of me and did terribly worse, cruel things. I mean, I turned on what I hoped would be just civilized lovemaking action this morning and was smacked in the face with a dog in the Nazi image. You know, when I was about 12 or 13 years old, the person who poisoned me showed me something like that. I mean, there's no proper regulation. A person like that is arrested normally. You know, why is it being made available by surprise to somebody who might casually browse? And from what I hear, children are easily accessing these kinds of sites. Where's the regulation? There must be a plot down the road to have a ruinous backlash. One of the reasons why I look into adult cinema is to rescue some of what I consider to be tasteful and good. I mean, some of the things that you would think, you know, someone who had lovers as I did would be familiar with personally, but I've never ejaculated on a woman's face. Never occurred to me to do that. But I find some of those images to be very attractive ones. But more importantly is the fact that there's a crossover in the Nazi Guild from Hollywood to the genocide pornography ring that earmarked me for extermination in these genocide attacks and now has you role playing. I think what you're doing is absolutely splendid, but you mustn't underwrite these inhumane actions. That's why I petitioned you to say something like, I'm familiar with Matt Curry's investigation. He's expressed his concern to me, and I see his point. Refer it to Patty Murray, my congressman, or Elizabeth Warren, because it's very disturbing what I have found. But it's a pattern if you look at the way that people impinged as Greg Carl, an arch parochial savage aligned with King Crimson. It uses the language impinged on the persona's experience, and he even admitted they were constructing the persona. So, when they implanted the neuroplasm, it was to make me because plastic to manipulate me. And but the point is when you look at some of these things, the way I was responding to them when I was 18, 19 years old, reacting against what I call the android zone. People looking over your shoulder to enforce a disobedient mindset. Why would they be cultivating insurrection? I didn't have that word until recently. And then when I would react against it by saying we're trivializing ethics, we're trivializing values, they'd laugh at me and point the finger and say, you want us to go into your checkered past and see what you're trivializing? I had amnesia about being kidnapped and tortured in a stolen car. And they denied that's what it was, but they had their wind all ready to play. Cadillacs and ice cream, all ready to play, organized. They rubbed my face in horror from a Jewish Holocaust survivor community. And when I would raise the issue of ethics, fair play, meaning, they would laugh at me and say I was a dreamer, an idealist. Stop rubbing your soft-headed fodder anachronisms, one of them said. Went on to start writing things for Trumpy. And his gang was stealing books from the museum. One of them just got caught. And not one single authority in the city of Pittsburgh has immediately called me up and said, we're sorry for saying that you were started rumors when you reported these people ages and ages and ages and ages ago. That's the reason why I beg you, Bobby, please stop being silent entirely. Try to talk to somebody. Talk to Mrs. Kennedy and make it clear that you're concerned. Because the way it's structured is to start rumors. One of the reasons I cried and cried and cried and cried when I fell in love with you was because you're such a perfect person for them to take hostage. And they have no scruples at all about taking people hostage. Look what they did to me as a child. Look what they did to Circe. And they may have it wired so if I say something, you're in danger. If I don't say something, you're in danger. What am I supposed to do? There's nothing I can do. Except to continue to try to advise people. And they say I'm a threat, I'm dangerous. Jeannie just said lie, 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 lie when she heard this stuff. She sees them around. She knows what they're doing. And they're like, oh, you don't know what a threat is, and they attack her. Why don't I ever threaten anybody? The whole business about Leslie Katz was I said that she was inciting a situation that could backfire on somebody, that she was making it sound like I was rejected for not being forceful, when in fact I was respecting her wishes, and I should be commended for respecting her wishes, given the level of action that she was promoting. Rather than threatening her, I was saying you have the right to leave, but it pains me that you reject me for gentlemanly behavior. And of course, it was all wired into their system of you got to get and take and be bellicose like Bowie and Trumpy, or you won't get nothing. It's who grabs, who gets. And, that's the whole mindset. And they're lying about every single effing detail. All of it is just bull. And when you try to raise something like, you remember the flowers they put in the rifles at Kent State? That's how they see anything ecology. Oh, poor little Jimmy. Still an Aquarian after all these years. We have to get it through their heads universally that the world is structured for people to be cooperative with each other and learn about each other and help each other. That the sciences are there to protect. And if you look at my rhetoric about Reagan, it was because they were using nuclear bombs, all this money, gobble, 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 gobble for nuclear bombs. And they have no use whatsoever, wasting everything on pure poison and destruction. It doesn't make any sense at all. And if you go into the rationale system, it's all backed up by one man's bullshit. George Kennan's theory of dominant theories were never stood up. And people have failed to ask what was Kennedy saying that they didn't want to hear him say. That's the most important thing. He was saying he was on an ecology tour when they did him in. He had just gotten that back from touring the American ecology. And he loved independence movements. That was another reason why they did him in. He loved independence movies around the world. He said, non-alignment is the future. He literally said that, when nobody has ever said that since. They said, pick a side, pick a side, pick a side. He said, non-alignment is the future. So when you talk about uprooting the system, try to understand that the roots of conscientious objection to fascism is written into the script of recognizing American legitimacy. Most, the founding fathers were flawed when it came to racism, but there were many people at the time who were immediately abolitionists, and they have persisted and persisted and persisted. So what you're doing, Bobby, makes so much sense to me. It's the persistence of something, a voice from the margins saying we have to stop. I said as a kid, my mother saved the poem. I was 14 years old. If we don't stop it soon, we'll meet our final doom. That was the message. And it was like 1973, 1974. So we have to use this period of armistice in, the constant rape of the earth to change the curriculum. That was my father's genius. He brought about a review of racism through the curriculum of higher education. You talk to these worm tongues like Peter Sinfield and Yoko Ono, who have it in for my father, and they wire all this stuff from the extreme of blacks. But if you actually talk to his colleagues through the years, the regional director of Amnesty International in that area called him a hero. She took class with him. She said, your father was a hero. Not everybody feels the way the loud sounds coming out of England do. Peter Gabriel had it in for Ryland, and he brought in some Senegalese hotwire act. But my father was regarded by many of his colleagues. I met black colleagues who thought he was wonderful. They were not all so extreme that calling a white man helpful was beyond the pale, as so many now are. Elijah Lovejoy, James Garfield, these were men of character who were white, who couldn't bear the idea of racism. What's the sense of beating them up? They were out there, they gave their lives. You'd say, well, we don't recognize anybody who doesn't give their lives. What a bunch of song and dance. The point is who you are. If you don't stand for it and you resist it, that's great. What's the point in beating somebody up when they're doing something that's great? It doesn't make any sense. They've stopped making sense because they've been brainwashed to stop making sense. Thank you. Thank you for for standing up for what's right.